Hello, beloved You-est You Soul Seeker listeners. I am, oh my goodness, so beyond excited to introduce this incredibly powerful, beautiful, light soul worker with you today. I want to tell you all about Shannon, and then we are going to get into a really juicy conversation. I'm so grateful she's here. Shannon Bobo is the host of At Home with Shannon Bobo. It is a show that started through a 30-day challenge due to COVID stay-at-home orders. The show is on the verge of becoming nationally syndicated and can be seen weekdays on Facebook Live and later on YouTube. And Shannon is also a casting director, comic, and producer. Shannon's background in TV, radio, live performance shows, live video streaming, and producing. And she is currently working both behind the scenes as a casting professional and in front of the camera as an actor, host, and stand-up comic. Shannon has been in and has helped cast countless on-camera commercials, ads, films, and television. She's an active member of SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, for those who weren't sure about the little those letters, so now you know. And she is writing a book called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Forgiveness. Oh my God, I love that title. And is an advocate for finding peace through forgiveness, self-love, and healing. We are going to talk about that. Shannon is also a certified Reiki healer and energy alchemist. She is an advocate for healing and forgiving through comedy. She's an ambassador for PAVE. This is Promoting Awareness, Victim Empowerment. It's an organization that provides support and advocacy for people who are survivors of sexual trauma. Shannon has a focus on helping as many people as possible to find their voice and creating a space for everyone to feel heard, which I love. Shannon currently lives in Los Angeles, California. We met through a heart math, like magical community. And Shannon, right away, I was like, who is this like magical, badass woman? I've got to know her. And that's how we're here. It's so cool.
Yes, it is. It's so cool. And just describing me, I was like, who is she describing? And I was like, oh my God, that's me.
I know, right? You're like, what?
Very humble. I was like, oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah, totally. Well, one of the questions actually, to just start right into that, there's so many things that I want to talk about with you, and I'm going to manage our time because there's a lot here I think can be very helpful to everybody listening. I think it's really easy. I've talked about this before. It's easy to hear all those like incredible projects and things you're up to. Maybe you can share a little bit about your story, the dips, the doubts, the turns. I'm assuming there are some along the way that have helped you to kind of really navigate to being what I call your You-est You, stepping into your higher self to be able to do these things. Can you just share a little bit, maybe one or two stories or examples of that along the way that have helped you become who you are?
Yes. Well, I'm one of those people who like security, and to not have security is kind of a challenge for me. So even when I first moved to Los Angeles, the first thing I did was got a full-time job working for a talent agency. Even though I knew immediately I wanted to be in front of the camera, I wanted to learn behind the scenes, and I wanted a steady paycheck. Because unfortunately, I subscribed to that idea that if you're going to be an artist in LA, you're going to be broke and poor. And I accepted that. And I'm grateful that I've now hit decline on it. But I would say that's an example of me playing small by going after being an assistant for many, many years, rather than putting my bootstraps up, so to speak, and just going for it full throttle. So that's one way that I've experienced one of the pitfalls of allowing myself to feed into fear. Yeah. And the other one is not completely believing in myself and allowing what people would say about someone like me to kind of rain on my parade, so to speak. I've always been told that I was too big, and I needed to calm down a lot. And I call those people wing clippers. I'm like, don't try to clip my wings. Like, let me fly, let me soar. Fan those wings, allow people to be themselves. And I even they can't do this now, but I was teased and called a transvestite or a transgender person. That's what they called it at the time. And I was so offended by that. They thought I was a man posing as a woman because I wear wigs and I'm so strong and I say whatever I want to say and I'm bold. And then the more and more I started doing comedy, stand-up comedy, I would do it at some gay clubs and they called me the bio queen. So then I started accepting the fact that I am kind of a drag queen, and I accept and receive that now. So those are kind of like the two turns that took me. If I could go back in time, I would definitely just say the younger version of myself, oh no, just keep being you even stronger now, because something about you is triggering them, and that's their stuff that has nothing to do with you. And I probably would have gone straight into acting, but I'm grateful that I did what I did too, because it put me in a place where I can help countless actors. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it's so powerful. It's interesting. One of the things I'm really curious about and we'll be writing about is this idea of like, we say this often to ourselves, like, who do I think I am? Or who does she think she is? And so it sounds like, I love that idea of the wing clippers. Like, I've never heard that, but so it sounds like there was a voice that that you started to make that voice that was saying you're larger than life, you're too big. There was a period where you started to internalize it. Until you learned not to.
Exactly. And speaking up and having a voice, because there's a lot of people who don't feel like they have their voice. So it's up to people who do have the voice to be the voice of the voiceless and to have those uncomfortable conversations and to not be afraid of what people may think or say about you by having your voice.
Yeah, no, this is really so powerful. And I think especially, well, now with just what we're dealing with in our world, in our country, like this is even more important, is to have conversations that matter, that are out there. And I love that you've like accepted this, what did you call yourself? Like being like at one with the whole drag queen feel, or being,
Yes, a bio queen. They call me a bio queen. I was like, I said, what's a bio queen? Then I looked it up when I got home and I was like, oh, that means that you're biologically a female, but you are absolutely a drag queen. And I was like, I am. I am. That's what I said. Oh, there's a name for me now. I accept and receive that.
I love it. I'm like, I'm going to be a bio queen with you. If you want to be a bio queen, let us know. We're going to start.
Yes, we're all bio queens. And they're basically saying women who are in their power.
I love that. I love that. I have to show you if you're watching this. This is I keep this around me. I'm showing a magic wand.
Yes, I love it. Your wand. That's so great.
I'm like, hey, I'm deciding. I know we're doing
a crown somewhere. I don't know where my crown is right now.
That's awesome. I love it. Just bringing in some props that was not planned, but I'm like, oh yeah, I love it. I love it. Can you say, so I want to talk about both your book and also PAVE, the organization. About it seems to me like forgiveness, self-love and healing is been part of your journey as well, or something that's important to you. I know from those listening, writing in, that this is a topic that has been very important to many, is how do you learn to forgive yourself? How do you forgive others? How do you find that self-love? I don't know where you want to start first, either with your book or with PAVE, but would love to talk about both.
Well, they do definitely go hand in hand. PAVE is, I met Angela when we were both college students. She runs PAVE. And she was a survivor of a sexual assault. And then after I interviewed her at the show that I was producing and the host of back then when I was in college, I was a little baby host. It was called Madison This Week. And she was one of my first few guests. She was a survivor. She was very strong about it. And I admired her. And then when the interview was done, I said, actually, I'm a survivor too. I'm just not out of the closet about it because I was so afraid. And so I've been kind of behind the scenes helping out with this organization for many, many years and I was a closeted survivor. So I didn't mention anything about my experience. And then it wasn't until this year really that I came out of the survival closet. And I'm like, I am a survivor and of sexual trauma, and I own it. And I 100% times infinity and beyond have a reverence and forgiveness for the person who hurt me. I love them. I mean, we still talk. It's good. And it's not like I have Stockholm syndrome or anything like that. It's just that I came to terms with the fact that what someone else did has nothing to do with me. That's their own journey and their own experience. And for me, forgiveness equal like just having self-love and self-care and having like a real compassion for what it is that brought that person to a point where they needed to hurt someone in that way. So, and with that said, they absolutely have to be responsible for their behavior. You know what I mean? I've been getting into some interesting and colorful conversations with people because it happened when I was a little girl. I was 15 years old. So I've been getting into some colorful conversations with people saying pedophilia is a sickness, not a crime. And I say, ooh, no, it's both. It's both. So you need to be held responsible. And so I've been an advocate for children and also women. I also sit on a board, not a board, but a committee for SAG-AFTRA with the Sexual Harassment Committee. And so I'm like, going out in the front lines and not being afraid to say, hey, we do need to have these boundaries in place so that this won't happen again. And I know it's, with everything else going on, it's easy to forget these other things are happening too, but I say, let's bring them all up and continue to have these uncomfortable conversations. During COVID quarantine, a lot of people are at home with the people who are abusing them. The numbers are on the rise. And so we have to keep having these conversations because it still exists. And in order to eradicate it, we have to first acknowledge it. And forgiveness has nothing to do with the person who did it. It has everything to do with us. And that's what brought me to writing my book, because I just realized that I keep getting experiences that allows me the space to forgive. And I was like, ooh. And then this is kind of a spoiler alert, and I hope people still read the book, but I realized that the most important person was to forgive myself, was to forgive the me that was playing small, that didn't think I deserved good things, that didn't believe that I should go straight after my dreams as a performer, and forgive myself for ever embodying what those people were saying about me, and feeling bad about my hair and like just different things like that, or how I choose to wear my hair, and just feeling guilty of not being all that I feel like it was meant for me to be. And I have to acknowledge the fact that, growing up as a Black woman, I was already carrying so many different crosses. Like I was female, woman, all these stereotypes that's attached to it. And just acknowledging the fact that some of the things that was bogging me down had absolutely nothing to do with me, with my spirit. My soul can never be touched or hurt. I'm a light. I remember you played that I Am Light by India Ari on one of our heart math calls. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember the song. So every once in a while I play it again just so I can remember I am light. Yep. I really am. And so is everyone, including think of a person that's probably hurting you. They're light too, and just have compassion for them. And not just, this doesn't mean that they get to get away with what they're doing. No, they have to be responsible for it. But just, that's their journey, and that's their choice.
All right, Shannon. Number one, I just keep hearing you are awake. You are an awake light. I mean, this is mastery level to me, what you're saying, because to be able to forgive, first of all, yourself, and then to forgive somebody else that has really, as you said, both a crime and a disease, like it's both, it's an and statement. What I can hear for you, which is what, I know from having forgiveness in my own life, and it is a feeling of peace. Like what surrounds you is a lot of peace and clarity. And so I'm thinking for someone, for those that are listening, that either have had sexual trauma or abuse or just, any kind of trauma. And it's often very challenging to forgive that person, often ourselves, but oftentimes it's somebody else. Do you have any processes or steps or ways you could guide them? Because I'm almost sometimes I can hear these questions and I'm like, oh, I think this is a process, and where you are is like the ultimate goal because you have such peace. I can feel it. But if somebody is not being talked about, in order to eradicate it, you do have to acknowledge it. I'd imagine that's first, is probably acknowledging it.
Acknowledging it and accepting that that happened to you, and it is not your fault, and it's nothing that you did wrong. And then also just when you have a self-love and a self-reverence, and knowing that there's a piece of you that can never be hurt, and just allowing that aspect of you to expand, it makes it easier. And this is through a lot of training. Like every single day I have to do things. It's like, that's why they call this practice, and not, I don't know if we ever master. It's like a practice, including some of all my healer friends. Like they're like, oh yeah, I go and see someone too. I go and get help. So I have a supportive network of people, and I call them my board of directors. And it includes people who I know supports me and they stand for me, and I know I can come to them and turn to them. And then I also learned this new technique called accessing consciousness. And once I get my grid on something that works for me, I'm like, oh, there's no turning back. And this is like a recent thing that I learned during this quarantine, because they said you're going to come out of the quarantine a hunk, a chunk, a drunk, or a monk. And I'm choosing monk and hunk. That means that you're going to look good and you're going to be super woke.
Yeah.
So I've been accessing these skills, and I learned this clearing statement, and it's like, it just goes show like whatever was right or wrong about that took place. Again, it's called accessing consciousness. Whatever right or wrong, whatever happened there, whoever point of perception, if they did it or you did it, or what is it that I'm creating around this, like making it mean something. And what if it didn't mean anything at all? Like if someone snubs you, or if it usually has to do with something that they're going through. It has nothing to go with you at all. And just to say, oh, I just let that go. I just clear it. I clear my attention to it. So those are some of the tools that I've been using in order to just remember that. And a lot of journaling, and I know these are themes that people that are similar to us already kind of do. Yeah. A lot of journaling. Every single morning I wake up and I write things that I'm grateful for. And if I don't remember to do it, I just let myself off the hook. Again, that forgiveness. It's like sometimes I don't do it in the morning, or something happened the night before and I'm not in that space. And then, so journaling, taking saltwater baths. I mean, I can't get enough baths. And just taking really good care of myself, and sometimes like not spending too much time watching anything that I know is going to trigger me, or like especially like social media can sometimes be triggering. So I've learned to just kind of like turn that off, and look at them as prayer requests too. Like whenever anybody, it's like, oh, that's a prayer request. Okay, cool.
Oh, that's a drop the mic. Like we just pause. That was brilliant. I've not heard that. I love that so much. And that resonates for me, because rather than, it kind of goes in line with the forgiveness, like somebody who's acting in that way or acting out, like let's turn it into, how can we pray for them or send them a prayer? Or I love that idea. Prayer.
That's from Agape, Reverend Michael, Reverend Beckwith. He speaks about that constantly. He's like, news stories, prayer requests. I don't think he's ever said debates on Facebook or prayer requests, but I'll add to it. But prayer requests.
I love that.
Because turning everything into, everyone always wants to create conflict. Not everyone, but people who are in conflict with themselves, they like to create conflict around them. And so just like, look at us, like, what is it? Especially like if somebody I haven't heard from in a very long time, if I post something very simple, then they're like, actually it's this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I haven't heard from you in forever. How are you? Like, where'd you, I didn't even know you were still around. And I say, let's not let this be our interaction. Why don't you give me a call and we could talk about this in person?
Oh, wow. I love that, Shannon. Side note, I'm a huge fan of Reverend Michael. I met him, got to spend time with him at the premiere of Blood, Sweat, and Tears when he was in that. Yeah. He's great. He is like, he doesn't, I mean, I know he's got thousands and thousands that feel that he's their minister, mentor. He's brilliant. Yeah. I love that. I love his energy. Oh yeah. And you're near there. Good. Oh, lucky you. Cool. But I love that prayer request, and that, it, to me, it's all in the same world of being compassionate, with yourself. And then it kind of goes, it's like what you just said is so brilliant. If you're in conflict with yourself, you're going to be looking to create conflict. Therefore, if you're in compassion and forgiveness with yourself, you can create compassion and forgiveness with others. And that's really I think that's what you're saying, which I just think is
Mm-hmm.
powerful.
It's just remembering all of this, like in times, because I'm human. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and I honor that too. I'm like, sometimes I don't always feel my magnificence, and I allow the space for me to have compassion for myself as well.
Yeah.
One thing my husband always says, he's like, like you acknowledge things. He's like, when you're going through something and you're not being in alignment, like you say it. And I was like, yeah, because I want to, I'm doing my best to make myself better. It's a work in progress. So.
I love what you're talking about. So one of the things that you talk about, or that you do, if we can move into this whole energy alchemist, what that means, would love to, because of course my ears perked. I'm like, what does that mean? What does she do? And I'm sure others listening are like, tell me more. So tell us more. What does that mean? What is that? What do you do? How do you use energy? I'm just all in.
Well, that gets really woo-woo and esoteric. My teacher gives me downloads on like from the stratosphere, and
Yes.
it's embarrassing to say it out loud, but
not here, Shannon.
It's Reiki healing, but it's almost like I connect to the energy of the other person. I allow myself to be anchored and grounded, like nothing else going on with me. And then I literally just evoke whatever, like this beautiful energy felt. Like I can almost see colors within people when I'm doing that, like just doing an energy scan on them.
Yeah.
So it just helps to get them in alignment and balanced. And usually people feel, I do it remotely and I also do it physically. I don't take on very many clients, and mainly because it is an energy, it's like you're giving away to yourself. And so since I do so many other things, I'm minimum on who I take on, and then I always refer them to Dorothy because she does it full time. But that's pretty much it. Like just getting those downloads from the ethers, and then just it's pretty cool. Like it's hard to explain it other than that. Like just because I have to be in a space in order to help people through that. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my brain, but
it makes complete sense. You have to know many of my beautiful, you know who you are. Listeners are awakened, awakening. We talk about these things all the time. And I think, to me, it feels very natural. We're energy. And listening to you, one of the questions I'm thinking is like, one would be, do you, it feels to me like you're an empath, and okay. I'm like, 'cause I'm feeling you, and I'm like,
everything.
yeah.
And I'm learning how, again, with this clearing statement that I just learned, accessing consciousness, and they do all sorts of levels. I learned to identify whenever I'm having an empathic feeling tone, and I'm like, ooh, I feel this, and it doesn't feel like it belongs to me. I'm like, that's not, like, especially if I'm having an incredible day, and then all of a sudden someone would, all of a sudden it shifts, and I'm like, what's going on? Why, what's going on with my experience right now? Like I was having a great day. I was feeling really, really good. And then all of a sudden it is shift. And then, but I'm learning now to just like completely identify that. I'm like, oh, that's not my feeling. That's someone else's. So just kind of hit decline on it. Like, that is not my feeling, to return to sender or eradicate it. I don't even want to return it back to them. I just want to like, let's just destroy that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because I'm thinking like with energy work, or many that tune in here are empaths. We've talked a lot about when you were talking about self baths, and I was like, I think she's an empath. And it's, with what is going on many levels in this world right now, in our country, in our society, how do you, I have found, I mean, you talked about it a little bit, managing what you watch and what you consume content wise, baths, journaling. But there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of, I think, I know for me, I have to be really mindful because it can feel exhausting if I go too much into the energy of, for example, with this pandemic, the fear. Like if you
Mhm.
start reading too much about that, it can be all consuming. How have you, I mean, you talked about it, but are there any other ways that you've been really anchoring yourself energetically as an empath?
Yes, well, my husband, I've allowed him to be the main person to find out things and I also find that information that's important find its way to me. I've learned that, so I do not watch the news because of that. And it's not that I'm not being informed, it's just that the correct information finds its way to me. And then if not, I literally go to the city's pages. I live in Los Angeles. So I just go to their page to find out what the latest measures are. I don't depend on what someone tells me to do or in that way. And then also just not like like fear is like is is not in alignment to being your truest self, your you-est self,
Yeah.
because it's like anticipating
Mm.
something. Anxiety is anticipating something that hasn't even happened yet, and fear is like, you
Mm.
know, this is very similar. Like we don't know. No, we don't know. And we've been listening to this woman named Minu, and I can't think of her last name right now, but she says this thing that I really, really love. She said, what certainty is uncertainty. What is certain is uncertainty. And
Mm.
I love, like, that really resonates with me, knowing that no one knows what's next. So because we don't know what's next, we get to co-create what's next. And
Mm.
what are we creating? So it's like we either can spend our time destroying things, like spending all day on social media, refuting people, like typing like a little,
Yeah.
um, actually it's this and actually it's that. I heard this, all these little doctors and nurses on, I'm like, oh, y'all have a law degree now, a doctor degree. Y'all, oh, wow,
Right.
doing some
Right.
really interesting things. Rather than doing that, spending my time in a hub, like learning. I've been spending so much time learning different techniques, like the clearing statement, and the optimist prayer, and heart math meditation, and even being here with you, like totally embodying, like having conversations like that. And if you don't like what the conversation is, you can just keep scrolling. You can just turn it off and then move on to something else and have those conversations that are empowering and enlightening.
Yeah.
I just so happen to be around a lot of artists and a lot of spiritually awakened people and a couple of business people that are just completely, we all have the same experience of, okay, we're in quarantine and everything's locked down. We have to start embracing and accepting a new way of existing because the old way doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
We may see some similarities, but so it's like we're all in this new creative path that we get to have a brand new experience if we choose. So what are we choosing?
I love
And that's a
that.
good question to ask every single day. Like, whenever you find yourself deep in a Facebook debate, just like, why am I
Mm.
choosing this right now? I could be writing my book. I could be, you know, and
Yeah.
not making yourself wrong. Because sometimes we do have to go
Yep.
down that path in order to see the light. Sometimes we do have to go into darkness in order to see the light. And sometimes it behooves people to watch the news all day,
Yeah.
because just to come to that conclusion that sometimes they don't even know what they're talking about either. Because no one knows what's
Yeah.
going on. None
Yeah.
of us know what's going on.
Yeah. Uncertainty and the certainty. I love that. Um, it's
Mhm.
funny with the Facebook debate when I don't see a lot of that because I've tended to like I don't have that and I don't follow a lot of people that get into that. But every now and then I'll see things and I'm like, bless you, and I'm moving on. Like,
Prayer. Like, ooh,
yeah,
prayer. Ooh, prayer.
yep, bless you, moving on. That's how I do it. I'm like,
I
seriously,
love that.
blessings, moving on. That does not serve me. I hope you find something that serves you. Like, that helps me to like not have anger, not just to like, yeah, put like what you said, the prayer, the sending the prayer. Um, Really, two last things before we wrap up. You mentioned this, and I was like, oh, what is that? You talked about the optimism prayer, and I'm like, I wonder.
Yes. Ooh.
Can you tell us about that,
Oh my
Shannon? What is
goodness.
that?
The Optimist Prayer is so amazing. One of my friends, I forgot who the author is. I want to Google search it really quick because it's so important.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. We'll quote.
the
Yeah.
Optimist Prayer is a prayer that it's the Optimist Creed prayer. And I'm not even sure who wrote it, but it's literally, I promise to be so strong that nothing can disturb my peace of mind. And then to talk health, happiness, and prosperity to everyone I meet, to make all of my friends feel that there is something special in them, to look at the sunny side of everything and make my optimisms come true, to think only of the best, to work only for the best, and to only expect the best, to be as enthusiastic about the success of others as I am my own, to forget the mistakes of the past and press on to greater achievements of the future, to wear a cheerful countenance at all times and give every living creature I meet a smile, to give so much time to the improvement of myself that I have no time to criticize other, and to be too large for worry, too noble for anger, too strong for fear, and too happy to permit the presence of trouble. That when I learned that, I was like, oh yeah, like a friend who I just met told me about it, and I believe it's like Christian D. Larson or something like that. It's
Oh, yeah.
I hope that I'm not misquoting that, but I'm pretty sure it is. I have it up in, because I don't know about you all, but my house has become like, it's my business, my house, entertainment center. It's all these things all at once, and
Yes,
so
all in
my
one.
house doesn't look like it. I'm like, it's a good thing we can't have people over because my house is looking like. And and I have my energy alchemist. I just looked at the little form that she gave me, the certificate to say you've been trained, and
Oh,
so
I love it.
yeah, so yeah, Optimist Prayer.
Oh, I love it. I'll find it and we'll post it in the show notes because I
Mhm.
was starting to take notes and I'm like, oh no, I'm not that fast. I can't write that all down. But that's so, see, that to me, there was a line you said, and this is something I think for everyone to think about. You said it, to be so full in connecting to yourself and becoming more self-aware that you don't have time to look at someone else's stuff,
Mhm.
right? Like, and the truth is, I don't know about you, like I have enough to work on the rest of my life on myself. Like I don't have time. I'm like, no, I'm good. I've got my own, trust me, it's a daily frickin' practice over here.
Yeah, it is. It literally is, and especially I feel like empaths. We're always. I can't speak for all empaths, but many that I speak to, including myself, it's almost like we're drawn to doing this type of work because we constantly need like that healing. Like I have my astrological charts read. I was like, oh yeah, I got. So I understand. I
Yeah.
understand the you of me in that way so well that I know certain things. I know that in order for me to have to keep up with this space and this pace of what my purpose is
Yeah.
and what I know I'm meant to be doing, I have to constantly be doing this inner work. It's like it is part of it is a job for me. It doesn't feel like work now. It's just part of what keeps me going every day. Just like you have to drink 8 glasses of water every day. I know in my heart, and I don't have to be obsessive about it. Like some days I don't, but I just know I'm like, what are you grateful for? Like whenever I'm having a moment of fear, because this, like for Taurus during this COVID experience, I had the experience of where I live being threatened because of countless reasons. But that's like the worst thing in the middle of a pandemic, having your space of where you occupy being threatened. And that's really scary, especially for a Taurian like me. And
Yeah.
I really had to find my peace within it and trust and know that I am safe and that the world and the planet is abundant and there's measures and there's protections
Yes.
and just trust that and really embody that and just prayer requests. Like in the middle of a pandemic, you're gonna threaten someone's security. Oh, that's not me. That's you. That's someone living operating from fear. And so
Yeah.
just sending those people who's prayers and like not and just having compassion for them. So I'm like, ooh, wait, what's going on with you that you're okay with like being okay with somebody being out on the street in the middle of a global pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's just like having that compassion for even people who are in that space and just loving them anyway
That's
and
beautiful.
asking their entities that like me to come out. I'm like, can your people who like me come to me?
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love what you just said. This is awesome. Shannon, oh my gosh, I feel like I could keep talking to you for hours. I'm like, this is always the hard part. I'm like, oh, I don't want to close. I always like to ask though, sort of that last question around, is there something, I call it a heart flare. Is there something on your heart, a flare, something that I didn't ask you, or just maybe a download or a feeling that you want to share that you haven't that we didn't get to yet? Anything at all? It could be anything or
Yeah.
nothing. I'm curious.
I would say my intent word is a organization. My intent, everybody gets a little word with a copper piece
Yeah.
on it. And my word is trust. Every year you're supposed to have a brand new word. I've been wearing trust for the past 2 years, and the universe just keeps giving me these beautiful opportunities to really trust not only myself, but trust the divine. Trust that we're always protected and safe and that all is well. And there's a bit of all of our souls that can never be touched and just be anchored in that knowing.
Oh, that is awesome. There we go. I was like, there's one more thing. There we go. That is so flippin' powerful. That is trust in yourself. Know you're always protected. All is well. Be anchored in that knowing and trust in the divine. I think we all, I won't speak for everybody, but I certainly could use a little like copper trust bracelet every single day. That is like, oh yeah, okay, trust in the greater order of things. Trust that
And
there's a
surrender.
surrender. Yeah,
Ooh,
that's really
that's like
powerful.
it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, they're like
Trust,
sisters.
surrender.
Oh, that's so
Thy
powerful.
will be done. And
Yes.
there's always a gift in every single perceived problem. Always a gift. It's like, oh,
Mm,
I wonder
yes.
how can this get better? That's another thing I've been seeing a lot. This
Uh,
has gotta get better. Like no matter how bad the situation is, it's gotta get better.
yes, I'm with you. I tell you what, I mean, and what you start asking is what's created. So absolutely, absolutely. And truthfully, there are some gifts. There are some real gifts of this time, this really interesting time. Some really interesting gifts.
Yes. Yes.
Uh, well,
Including meeting you.
what'd you say? I missed that. I'm so sorry.
Including meeting you. That's been a gift.
Oh, thank you. Woo, I'm flushing, guys. I'm flushing. Oh my God, my cheeks got really red if you're watching. Can you see? They're like, woo.
Yes, you're so adorable.
I'm like, oh, I'm blushing. I'm always learning to receive, but I really felt that and I feel the same. I'm so grateful. Like your energy just sparkles through the microphone, video, audio. Like you are just, as you started with India already talking about, being this light, like you're totally embodying it. And I'm just here to remind everybody, you're a light too. We all are. And Shannon, thank you for just stepping into your bio queen, like large winged angelic light worker self, and for who you are. It is so needed. Is one of the first things I noticed about you is your energy and your light. And I'm like, we need her here now. I want everybody to hear you, your wisdom. I've got like so many notes to add about all the gems. And seriously, thank you for who you are in this world. It is such an honor
Thank you.
to connect.
You're very welcome and thank you for having me.